He held the stop sign like a shield. Standing at the corner of Maple and 3rd, the morning sun slicing through the cold November air, he raised one gloved hand and stepped into traffic. Horns didn't bother him, neither did the biting wind. He moved slow, not from fear, but from years. Cars halted. Schoolchildren waited. His coat was oversized, frayed at the cuffs, and zipped up to his chin. A faded orange vest clung to his shoulders. His hat, the kind issued by city maintenance, sat low over his brow. Most people just called him Pops, the crossing guard, the old man with the limp. But that morning something happened, something small. As he helped a little girl tie her shoe on the curb, a gust of wind whipped down the street and caught the front of his coat. The zipper tore open with a sudden jerk. Underneath, pinned to a perfectly pressed olive-green undershirt, was a chest full of ribbons. Bronze stars, silver star, purple heart. A medal of honor. Silence rippled down the line of cars. Then one door opened. A tall man in a tailored uniform stepped out. His boots struck pavement with purpose, 4 stars on his shoulder, and he saluted. Not out of nostalgia, not out of ceremony, but because protocol demanded it, because every soldier, no matter his rank, salutes the medal first. And suddenly, the old man on the corner wasn't Pops anymore. If you believe heroism doesn't always wear a cape, or even demand attention, type honor in the comments, hit like to show respect, and subscribe for more stories that prove some salutes echo forever. His name was Harold Joseph Crane, born in 1943. Served in Vietnam, then in classified operations across Cambodia, Laos, and later the Persian Gulf. 32 years in the U.S. Army. Retired as a full-bird colonel. But none of that mattered to the PTA mothers who offered him warm cocoa in winter, or the teenager who skateboarded by with earbuds in, shouting, "Thanks, man," without slowing down. They didn't know who he was. He didn't tell them. He didn't need to. The yellow vest became his new uniform. His new battlefield was crosswalks and careless drivers. But every morning, Harold rose at 5:30 a.m. with military precision, polished his boots, folded his scarf in a perfect triangle, took 38 steps to the kettle, 12 minutes for the tea, 1 sugar cube. He didn't care if the world saw a retired man with a weathered gait. He knew who he was. And he knew that if he could protect even one more innocent life, even if that meant holding a stop sign instead of a rifle, the mission was not over. Harold didn't want recognition. He didn't want awards. He wanted something harder to achieve. Peace. Not just peace for himself, but peace in the quiet corners of a world that moved too fast to remember the slow, steady footsteps of men who'd once stood between chaos and civilization. He took the job because the school had trouble finding someone to show up on time. But for Harold, punctuality wasn't a suggestion, it was doctrine. His goal was simple: to stand, to serve, to never let his post go unmanned. But time is no ally. His knees screamed every morning. The cold cut deeper each winter. His left hand trembled from an old injury he never spoke about. And behind his steady eyes, there were nights he couldn't sleep, because some memories refused to age quietly. More than that, the neighborhood had changed. Teens laughed at him. Some threw trash near his booth. A few muttered slurs, old freak, under their breath. One mother once complained that he scared the children. "He looks like a statue," she said to the principal. "Too intense." They didn't know the difference between a stare and a scan. He wasn't glaring, he was watching for threats, out of habit, out of memory. Still, whispers started. Was he too old? Too stiff? Did they need someone friendlier? The school considered replacing him. They had no idea what they were about to lose. Then came the morning with the truck. An F-150 ran the red light just 2 blocks away. A boy, maybe 6, red backpack, Velcro shoes, was halfway across the street. Harold dropped his sign, lunged. The hit missed the boy by inches. But Harold wasn't so lucky. His shoulder took the brunt of the impact as he yanked the child back. He fell hard. Didn't cry out. Didn't groan. Just got up slowly and brushed the dust from his pants. "Go on now," he told the boy gently. "You're late." People clapped. The principal shook his hand. A news station even showed up the next day. But Harold hated attention. So, the next morning, he zipped his coat up tighter and stood a little straighter. The pain didn't matter. The post had to be manned. Then came the ceremony. Veterans Day. The school wanted to do something nice. They planned a small assembly, invited a guest speaker, a general, someone Harold had once trained at Fort Bragg, though no one knew that. Harold declined to attend. "I'm just a crossing guard now," he said. But the wind had other plans. That morning he bent to help a child tie her shoe. His coat fell open. His decorations, once private, once sacred, were suddenly visible. The metal gleamed beneath the morning sun. Someone gasped. A teacher dropped her coffee. And the general saw. The general stepped forward, mid-speech, mid-sentence, and approached Harold slowly. Without saying a word, he stopped in front of the old man and saluted. 4 stars saluting 1. Silence fell across the playground. Then whispers. Then awe. Harold didn't return the salute. Not immediately. He just looked at the general. Eyes narrowed. "Don't do that," he said quietly. "But sir." "You don't salute the man," Harold said. "You salute what it took." The general nodded. "You taught me that, Colonel Crane." A tremor ran through the crowd. "Colonel?" The children stared up at Harold differently now. The parents, some with tears, but Harold didn't want this. The story leaked. Media showed up. His mailbox overflowed. City Hall called to offer him an award, a parade. He turned it all down. He stopped showing up to the corner. His booth stood empty for the first time in 1,174 days. People wondered, assumed age had caught up, assumed maybe he was gone. But it wasn't age that kept him home. It was shame, not for what he had done, but for being seen, for having his quiet broken. Because some warriors don't know how to accept peace when it comes late and loud. 1 week later, a knock came at his door. It was the general. Not in uniform, Just a man, just a student again. He said nothing at first, just handed Harold a folder. Inside, letters. From kids, a petition. From parents, a certificate. From the city. In one photo, the empty booth, covered in flowers. You were never just a crossing guard, he said. You were still on watch. Harold looked at the papers, at the signatures, at the names. He folded the folder shut, and finally smiled. The next morning, the stop sign rose again, and Harold stood taller than ever. But now his coat stayed open, on purpose. He wore the medals not to boast, but to remind that peace is protected by those willing to carry war in silence, and that some uniforms, even when hidden, still command respect. Kids waved harder, parents honked and saluted, and the city? They renamed the street corner Crane's Watch. Years later, long after Harold passed, the booth still stood, in glass, preserved. Beside it, a plaque. He never missed a morning, not even the ones after war. And on Veterans Day, a boy asked his teacher why people still saluted when they passed the corner. She smiled. Because sometimes a hero stands so quietly, we almost miss him. Today, young soldiers still visit that street. They leave challenge coins, dog tags, flags. They don't say much. They just stand. Because long ago, one man did the same. And now, every morning at 7:45 a.m., a city remembers. Not with noise, not with banners, but with silence and respect. Because Harold Joseph Crane taught them something timeless. You don't have to be seen to stand guard. And sometimes, the strongest salutes are the ones you never ask for. They called it Crane's Watch, but it had become more than that. More than a name. More than a corner. It was now part of the city's rhythm, like the courthouse bell at noon, or the bakery cinnamon scent spilling into Main Street every morning. But even long after Harold Joseph Crane was gone, after the last echo of his footsteps faded from the crosswalk, after the city installed automated lights and new digital signs, something human still lingered in that space. Every year, on the anniversary of that Veterans Day, the town held a quiet observance. Not a parade. Harold would have hated that. No banners, no brass bands, just silence. At 7:45 a.m., the exact time Harold had always raised his stop sign, the entire street shut down for 60 seconds. Cars paused, engines idled, children stood in place. Even the mayor removed his hat and stood, not at the podium, but at the curb, where Harold once stood. A bell rang once. And every person, from bankers to baristas, from veterans to first graders, turned to face the small glass booth that still stood at the corner. Inside it, untouched, was Harold's vest, his stop sign, his hat, and on a brass hook, a folded flag. But what drew most attention wasn't the objects. It was the wall behind them, lined with photos, some black and white, some full color, some official portraits in dress uniform, others blurry snapshots, smiles in tents, dusty helmets, letters home. Each photo bore a small plaque, one of ours. The wall had started with Harold, but over time, parents began submitting photos of others, uncles, aunts, grandparents, even children. It wasn't just a memorial, it was a declaration. This city sees those who serve. One year, a girl named Eliza, age 9, slipped a drawing into the booth between the glass panel and the display case. It showed Harold in his vest, one hand raised, the other holding a teddy bear. In the background was a tank, a flag, and the caption, "Thank you for making my walk to school feel safe." Her parents hadn't even known she remembered him, but she had. Across town, there was another quiet change. The elementary school had built a new gymnasium. Not big, not flashy, just enough for indoor recess, winter PE, and community events. They named it the Colonel Crane Pavilion. On one interior wall, carved into stone, were the words Harold had once said to the general, "You don't salute the man, you salute what it took." Below it, a touchscreen display let students explore the history behind those words. Some clicked through quickly, others lingered. A few returned every week. And in the years that followed, more than one child wrote about Harold in their essays, choosing him as their American hero for history class. He didn't wear a cape, he wore a scarf and gloves, and he stood in the cold for people who didn't always wave. One boy, Jalen, age 12, used to struggle at school. He didn't talk much, rarely smiled. But one afternoon, after visiting Crane's watch with his uncle, a veteran of Iraq, something shifted. He asked his teacher, "Do you think I could ever be like him?" That year, Jalen started standing by the school entrance 10 minutes early every morning, holding the door for teachers, helping kindergartners carry their backpacks, not because he had to, because someone once did it for him. In a quiet suburb 5 towns over, the retired general, the one who had once saluted Harold on that windy morning, now gave lectures at the War College. He told the story often, not just because it was powerful, but because, he said, it was a reminder that leadership doesn't end when you hang up the uniform. In one speech, he paused, hand on the podium, and said, "Crane taught me that discipline is not just battlefield instinct, it's a lifetime posture." A cadet asked him afterward, "Sir, was he really just a crossing guard?" The general smiled. He was never just anything. At the VA hospital, a nurse taped a quote above the medication fridge. Some uniforms, even when hidden, still command respect. No one questioned it. They all knew who it referenced. Harold's story had become something bigger than the medals on his chest. It had become code. An invisible salute passed between those who served and those who saw. Years passed, then decades. And yet, on some days, especially in early November, when the wind runs sharp down Maple and 3rd, people say they can almost feel it again. The steady presence, the quiet protection, the calm command of a man who never raised his voice, but made entire streets stand still. Children point at the booth and ask, "Who was that guy again?" And their parents kneel, smile, and whisper, "He was the one who stood still, so others could move forward." The last photo added to the wall showed Harold seated on a bench, coat open, medals gleaming under a setting sun. He's not looking at the camera. He's watching something off frame, his face calm, eyes focused. The caption reads simply, "He stood until the end, and even then, he never sat alone." If you believe quiet courage is worth remembering, if you believe one man can change the way a city sees itself, then keep walking forward, but never forget who once stood in place, so you could. Honor isn't loud. It doesn't need to be, because in every act of unseen service, in every child who now walks safely, in every silence that holds weight, Harold Crane is still there, watching, guarding, always.